We have breaking news as it's official. The Pittsburgh Penguins have hired their next head coach, and we're going to break down who this head coach is, what he will bring to the table, and why this was one of the best moves Kyle Dubas has made as the GM of the Pittsburgh Penguins. We're going to break down what this means for the future of this team in this episode of Penguins Digest. But before we do that, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 68% of you who watch these videos are not subscribed to the channel. So if you want to stay up to date with everything that's happening with your Pittsburgh Penguins, go down below, hit that free subscribe button, because of course this is the place to be for all your daily Pittsburgh Penguins content. But let's jump right into it. It's official and is not who we thought it was going to be, which is very interesting. We will break it down in this episode. But earlier this morning, from David Pagnotta and Elliotte Friedman, and first from Elliotte Friedman, he said there's a word today that momentum is growing for Dan Muse to become the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins. That is exactly what happened. We'll get into that. But David Pagnotta as well said that word on Tuesday, so just yesterday, was that Mitch Love and Jay Woodcroft were out of the mix. They were eliminated. So we know that Mitch Love met with the Pittsburgh Penguins and Kyle Dubas late last week, and we know that Jay Woodcroft also met with the Pittsburgh Penguins last week, and they were eliminated from the process, and they were told that it came down to DJ Smith, who we covered on the channel, and it was looking like it was either Mitch Love or DJ Smith, but it was actually DJ Smith or a mystery finalist per Elliotte Friedman, and that individual is Dan Muse, and Dan Muse has been officially hired as the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and there is a lot of reasons to be very happy about this move if you're a Pittsburgh Penguins fan. This is a coach that is going to change things here in Pittsburgh, and he's a coach that's worked with young players, which is something we've talked about on the channel, and he's a guy that I believe will be able to work with not only the young players, obviously, but some of the older talent, and most importantly, Sidney Crosby, because we know the relationship between Sidney Crosby and Mike Sullivan and how Sidney Crosby thinks, and that was a big question mark with this looming hiring, which now, has turned into an official hiring. Now, Kyle Dubas, this is from Chell Penguins. Kyle Dubas has hired Dan Muse as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, for those of you who don't know, Dan Muse was the assistant coach of the New York Rangers last. They didn't have a great season last year, but they went to the Eastern Conference Final just 2 seasons ago. I guess 2 seasons ago at this point, or last season, however you want to call it. I guess the Stanley Cup Final hasn't been, the Stanley Cup hasn't been rewarded yet. So, anyway, he oversaw their special teams, and their special teams, the New York Rangers, at least in penalty kill, were 11th in the league last year. They weren't that bad for a team that missed the playoffs and were horrible for the majority of the season. He's also 42. He's not a recycled head coach, which is another great thing, because there's a lot of names out there that are recycled head coaches, and a lot of teams are doing that. Not a great idea. And here's what he's good at: player development. Love that for a young team, right? And special teams. Good hire, and it was absolutely a good hire. And you can see here from Peter Baugh, who is a member of the media in New York who covers the New York Rangers. He said Dan Muse was one of Peter Laviolette's Rangers assistants. Again, Peter Laviolette was fired. Mike Sullivan was essentially swapped in this trade, it seems like, for Dan Muse with the New York Rangers, and he's going to take on his own coaching staff there in New York. But Peter Laviolette, when he was the Rangers head coach, Dan Muse was his assistant, and he said that he was a former coach at the college level as well, and has strong relationships with players from the program, including Gabe Perreault, who is now one of the best young prospects in the New York Rangers system. And not just him, but he has a relationship with a lot of other really good players from that program as well. And he said, for the casuals, this is from Salad, for the casuals, Dan Muse coached and developed the BC line at the NTPD program. And that includes guys like Will Smith, who's currently, looks like he's going to be a star in the league as well with the San Jose Sharks. Gabe Perreault, who looks like he's going to be, like I mentioned, a star in this league. He's one of the best young prospects that the Rangers have. Ryan Leonard, who just made his NHL debut with the Washington Capitals as well. I'm extremely optimistic about this hire. I'm not even optimistic about this. This is a great hire for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Like, if you're a Penguins fan, you should be ecstatic today. Now, I wanted to jump into this as well. This is from GM Kyle Dubas, and this is his official statement on hiring head coach Dan Muse today. That was just released 50 minutes ago at the time of recording, but he went on to say that during this process, we met with many candidates who we felt would have been a great fit for the next head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Obviously, DJ Smith, there's Mitch Love, Jay Woodcroft, there's a couple others in the mix. Dan Muse stood out as the best choice. What separated Dan was his ability to develop players, win at all levels, where he's been a head coach and consistent success coaching special teams in the NHL. That was a big factor too. He is a great special teams coach at the NHL level, and not necessarily a head coach, right? He wasn't a head coach of the Rangers, but a great assistant coach, special teams coach, and he has coached as a head coach at many different levels and has found success and can develop young players. He went on to say, from his success in developing college and junior players to his impactful work with veteran players during his time in the NHL, Dan has shown a proven ability to connect with players at all stages of their careers and help them reach their potential. And that's a big thing for the Pittsburgh Penguins right now. You know, if you take a look at this team, you got guys like Rutger McGroarty who's coming up. You got guys like, Ville Koivunen who's coming up who, could use a coach like this. And not only that, he's going to be able to work with Sidney Crosby as well. Like, this is a team that is turning things around very quickly. I like this move. I do like this move for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And this is from the Sidney Crosby archives. And he said, I watched 5 minutes of an interview with Dan Muse, and I can tell you right now, Sidney Crosby is going to love this guy. Dan sounds like a hockey nerd. As far as everything else, time will tell. But as far as everything else goes, special teams, all this other stuff, the track record's there. The resume is there. So it's going to be interesting to see if it does translate to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, mention Rutger McGroarty, a guy he's going to have to work with, a guy who's probably going to make the NHL next year, right? Maybe full-time. We'll see what happens with that. But it's looking like he's going to not turn pro, He's going to play in the NHL next year, maybe make the team out of camp. And this is from the Pens Inside Scoop. Dan Muse has substantial experience with USA Hockey, serving as a head coach with the national team development program from 2020 to 2023, and after 23 was obviously hired on as the New York Rangers assistant coach, and leading the group to a gold medal at the 2023 World Under-18 Championships. Who was captain of that team? It was Rutger McGroarty. So he has experience coaching, quite literally coaching this player before. So this is a really good mix. Really like this hire from NHL Pens as well. People are telling me Dan Muse is a development coach, and if that's the case, I'm a big fan of the hire. Just a new voice in this new era of Penguins hockey is so crucial. Pens will have a lot of youngsters coming into the lineup over the next couple of years. I'm hoping Muse is the guy for this, and he's going to be. They have a ton of guys coming in, younger guys, to this lineup, and he's going to be great. This is from Jordan Schmaltz as well, who's done some insider work as well since retiring. And he said, folks, hearing Pittsburgh Penguins' newest hire, Dan Muse, aligns very well with the vision of Kyle Dubas. Those who have played for the 42-year-old coach at different levels credit him for being the hardest working coach they've ever seen. When I asked if he's a beauty, my understanding is that he's probably not the coolest guy you've ever met, but doesn't operate with the Cooper or Montgomery level of swagger, which is interesting, I guess. But milk drinker or whiskey drinker, somewhere in between. My summary and scouting report would say that he comes out to be a good nerd, a hockey nerd, and it sounds like he's going to get this team back on track. So, again, Penguins fans, this is something to be excited about, and I'll leave you with this one last thing. This is from Elliot Friedman today, just 43 minutes ago, and it says, Kyle Dubas and the Penguins have talked about this being a development job. Dan Muse knows how to develop young players. So whether Dan Muse is the guy to kind of lead them and usher them out of the rebuild will be, it remains to be seen. But one thing is for sure, this is the guy for the job right now. And I would have loved, I think Mitch Love would have been a great choice for this as well. Probably, a close number 2 for me, at least. Obviously not for Kyle Dubas, and he's in there in the meetings. But this is a great coach that I thought was actually going to stay with the New York Rangers. So very interesting stuff. Let me know in the comments how you feel about this hiring. I think this is a great hiring for the Penguins. And there was very few coaches on the list that they were interviewing that I thought were going to be a bad fit for this team. But this is probably, now that all of this has come out, a very good hire. So we're going to have some more on this on the channel as well. So stay tuned for that. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything Pittsburgh Penguins.